Now, that's where I want to bring in best-selling author Brad Meltzer, author of the brand new book just out today, The First Conspiracy, The Secret Plot to Kill George Washington. Brad, thanks very much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Now, Brad, I have to tell you, when I knew you were coming on the show today, I was very excited because I had seen a preview of the book. And I was a big fan of the television show Turn Washington Spies, which was about the Culper spy ring, George Washington Spies. But this book is about something a little bit different. The essence of the book, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that George Washington had a cadre of trusted security guards, really his version of the Secret Service. And a few of them engaged in a conspiracy to kill him. Is that correct?
That's exactly right. I found this story nearly a decade ago in the place where all good stories hide, which is in the footnotes. And I was like, a secret plot to kill George Washington. Is this real? Is this nonsense, something from the internet? But it was real. And in 1776, a group tried to kill him. And what amazingly happened is when George Washington found out about it, he gathered those responsible, built a gallows, and hung one of the people responsible in front of 20,000 people, the largest public execution at that point in North American history. George Washington brought the hammer down, was like, don't mess with me, I'm George Washington. But as you said, he had his own private bodyguards. And what was amazing about it is he asked all of his regiments for their 4 best men. He said, give me your 4 best. He wanted the best of the best. And this became the General's Guard. They called them the Commander's Guard. They were also known as the Lifeguards. That was the name that stuck, the Lifeguards, because they guarded George Washington's life. And these were the men who turned on him in the plot to kill George Washington.
Now, one of the other takeaways from your book is that the counterintelligence effort to find out who these people were essentially was the predecessor, the long before predecessor to today's CIA. So how did that work? Who was involved in the investigation to uncover who was plotting against George Washington? And what did they go on to become? Did they become an intelligence network later on in the war? Tell us about that.
Yeah, so what happened was, when it happened, George Washington realized you don't just need a great offense when you battle, you need a great defense too. And so he created basically his own small ring where people could investigate what was happening in this plot. He put John Jay, who of course became the first Supreme Court justice in charge of it, and 3 people, John Jay, Gouverneur Morris, and Livingston, all together were part of this Committee on Conspiracies. Picked a great name for it. The Committee on Conspiracies would kick down doors, would do interrogations, would ferret out the information. But the amazing part of it is this was our first counterintelligence operation. Today, we think that the CIA, the precursor, was the OSS. But it's actually this moment that is the cause of it all. In fact, in CIA headquarters right now in Langley, Virginia, there is a room that is dedicated to John Jay, who they call the father of counterintelligence. And this is the moment, the plot against George Washington, where it first came to light and they first started going on that path.
So how far up the food chain did this go? Who was ultimately architecting this plot against George Washington, and what happened to those people?
Yeah, so of course, as we mentioned, there were the bodyguards, George Washington's personal guards, but it went all the way up to the mayor of New York and to the governor of New York, who were both on the British side back then. And you know, again, it's almost like a plot you'd see, you know, can you imagine if the mayor of New York and the governor of New York today were plotting against the president to kill him? You know, it's something if I made up, my editor would say no one will believe it. Right. But it really happened. And what eventually happened is they all were taken out. My favorite parts, what you'll see in the book, is, of course, you see George Washington's character. And, you know, we like to think of the revolution as this time we all came together and beat the British. But we were divided back then, just as we're divided today. There were as many British loyalists in New York as there were people on the other side, on the American side. And it was Washington. There was no flag back then. There were no United States back then. It was George Washington who put his arms out and said, we need to stop fighting with each other. We need to come together. And those are the great moments, is to reveal not just the plot against George Washington, but also to get to see the depth of who he was as a person, his modesty, his character, his decency, things that are so vital in leaders today.
You know, Brad, I only have about 20 seconds left. I have to ask you, but I think you basically answered it because the story is fascinating. What made you ultimately say, I need to write this book? It's a great story, but I need to write it. I need to make a book out of this.
You know what? I found, as I mentioned the story nearly a decade ago, for 5 years, I couldn't shake it. And my rule is when you're thinking about something for 5 years and you can't shake it, you got to do it.
Yeah, I can't wait to read it, I'll be honest with you. This is one of the few books, I review a lot of books on the show. This is really in my wheelhouse. It looks absolutely fascinating. Brad Meltzer, the new book is The First Conspiracy, The Secret Plot to Kill George Washington. Brad, thanks very much, and good luck with the new book.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks for watching. If you'd like to see more breaking news coverage, exclusive interviews, and great videos, click over here to our YouTube channel and subscribe. And don't forget to download the free Newsmax TV app. Newsmax TV, it's real news for real people.